what are the criteria for you to figure out, okay, this is what something I want to buy, or is this something I definitely don't want to buy?
So we're trying to look at only trophy properties. So using the real estate analogy again,
Yeah. Yeah.
in real estate, you want to go after location, location, location. We
Mhm.
want to go after Billboard Top 100, Billboard Top
Uh,
100.
uh,
These songs are a part of Humanity's playlist, which are defined by the top 10,000 songs,
mhm,
which is the Billboard Top 100 of every year since 1950.
mhm.
These are the songs that people know, or are recognizable. They get played in stadiums, etc. So we want a piece of those top properties, those trophy properties, because they are not declining to zero, which most songs on Spotify of the 90, 80, 90 million songs on Spotify, you don't really want because you want to buy um, trophy properties that are associated with a global brand.
Okay. Now, is this top-down approach or bottom-up approach? Meaning, like, do you guys look at the list and then say, I'm gonna try find producers or songwriters or recorders or whoever has copyright on this particular song. I'm trying to find these people and I'm trying to convince them to sell me? Or is it you run into people who happens to be in the circle for these and they happen to be associated with certain songs in that list and then you just go for that? Like which is more in reality, what happens more?
Yeah, in reality, because we tried to make it dead obvious with the name Music Royalties Inc., we're first on Google. So the inbounds that we get from not just investors, but also artists is quite tremendous. And if you take what we said, where every song has 5 to 15 owners times 10,000 songs, it's pretty unlimited deal flow. So we kind of get an inbound every 3 weeks from a new artist that's wanting to sell. So really, it's just we're trying to buy good double-digit yields. So that's how we base our criteria, where it's just not really going to look for deals because there are so many that come to us, and from the artists that every deal we've done with an artist, they've all taken some form in shares, so they keep recommending it to their friends. So our proprietary pipeline comes from personal relationships mainly, and it's just trying to choose the yields that are better uh, and more accretive to music royalties that allow us to increase the dividend by 20 to 30% a year.
Perfect. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now that we're on this topic, we'll move on to my next, which is cash flow. So I've always been curious, how do you determine the cash flow? For example, you could look at song, look at the past plays, blah blah blah, but you cannot predict the future. So how do you actually estimate the cash flow you're getting from there? Because that's, I think, in my opinion, very vital to determine the valuation pricing for the song, right?
Yeah, so there's three types of income on a song. There's streaming, radio, and sync. Sync is completely, you cannot model that out. It's not predictive. It's one-off licenses, like if Johnson and Johnson needs to license a song for a Super Bowl commercial, or Toyota with the Supra coming out, they license Pinball Wizard. Those are one-time, one-off payments for advertising as well as TV and movies. Because every TV show or movie reserves 5 to 10% of their budget for music licensing. Radio is usually at the beginning phase of a song. So really, from when we showed the Spotify breakdown, you can see the monthly listeners, and that's more predictive in terms of whether or not a song will appear on people's playlists and if people are still listening to it. And the believe it's the mathematical theorem of the Lindy effect, meaning if something has been playing for 50 years, it's more than likely to play for the next 50 years as well. So you want to base all your purchase price off of streaming income.
Oh, okay. But the streaming income, you don't have a 50-year record, do you? So how do you best estimate?
Well, okay, so going back to the big picture
Yeah.
items, you recall that it used to be, let's face it, a high profile business, but the numbers were modest in a $100 trillion economy. Call it 20 billion. It was the peak of CDs, and now you're essentially saying that transition from just young people mostly buying music, call it 30 million, moving to 3 billion smartphones. So the growth trajectory of smartphones that didn't used to exist, streaming that didn't used to exist, is really the system growth across the board. Now, if you have a piece of a classic song, and if you start paying attention to the songs you hear everywhere at at weddings, at stadiums, on the radio, in restaurants, it's remarkable how old most of the songs are, 30, 40, 50 years old. And then they could also be remade and remixed, and you could have the modern version of an old song. So that we didn't really cover that, but there's lots of songs that really were created a long, long time ago and then just get picked up. So it's almost this one hit wonder that your ears know bringing back to life. And we've seen it specifically with our Dancing in the Moonlight investment. So it's truly a one hit wonder. It's 50 years old from 1973. In fact, the original was written 1969. But if you went back 10 years, that song wouldn't have been earning even $100,000 because, where's that being played? Maybe just, legacy radio stations. Well, it's grown to over $1 million a year income because everybody's rediscovered that song and added it to their playlist. And so essentially that the stickiness of the top songs, not the ones that are sort of here today, gone tomorrow, because you think about how much content is created every day. It's really those top songs that people add to their playlist that creates the universe of the evergreen cash flow. So it's a very selective group. Connor used the term trophy properties, but if you think about the next wedding you're going to go to, or bar mitzvah, or Christmas songs, the seasonal side, even funeral songs, one hit wonders, those ones that get you up on the dance floor in all cultures, in all languages around the world, it's a much smaller list. And so that's the unique thing. It's just like saying, why do the trophy properties in the certain major cities get such a premium, and you go 2 blocks, in either direction, or in any direction, it's a fraction of that downtown, center, the universe price, right? So
let me ask you this. Based on what I heard, I think, let me sum it up if I understood correctly. You guys have a list to go through, and out of the list, you're going to analyze the past streaming revenue. If there a certain number you find like below that number, like below, like, I don't know, like 5%, 10%, 20%, like below that, you will not touch it? Or are you saying it's all wide open and you just choose some circumstance? Is there a benchmark there?
I think the benchmark for sure has been trying to average a 10% yield on good stuff that's for the long term.
Got it. So
now just to make a couple of points. One, I told you that things have grown. So for example, when we bought a piece of the Who and Matthew Knowles and so on, we paid 12.5 times trailing cash flow. So very logical, traditional acquisition prices on something that's growing. So if it goes from an 8% yield to a 10% yield, because remember, as I told you before, the big artists were commanding 20 times and more, at the peak of the market a couple of years ago. So, but it's also unique to have a passive income that's not 5-10 years long. It's 100 years long, right? And so most people are not used to analyzing and doing a net present value on that. So the simple answer is it's a net present value multiple, cash yield, the same metrics we use for any business, right? Avicii, why don't you bring up Avicii on Spotify just as an example to show you
Yeah,
how
yeah,
big
yeah.
how
Yeah.
big the numbers are,
I think
because
that'd be great.
when you
Like,
talk about the so-called mystery of the numbers and how you evaluate it, what's key is that you don't just listen to the music, you're trying to figure out how popular it is around the world, not just in your own country or your own backyard. So the reason why this is an important example for us is when we discovered this opportunity in 2017. In fact, that's another reference point to make. 2 years before that, surprisingly, in 2015, there were only 50 million music subscriptions, if you think about primarily Spotify and Apple. Well, now there's over 650 million. So that's the growth rate of the new money that's coming to the business, using Connor's example at $100 a subscriber. But of course, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and probably half of them right now have a smartphone. So it's still a long trajectory for growth. When it comes to evaluating these things, so Avicii is a Swedish DJ who's remarkably, not performing in his own videos, writing his own songs, but he went around the world 800 times, did that many concerts to tens of thousands of kids, and created a global brand on some uplifting songs. So we got a piece of the nights, but look at the size of the numbers. He's got 34 million monthly listeners, which we would say are customers. And it's pretty hard to have a local business that has 35 million customers,
that's right.
local pub, local real estate business. So when we bought a piece of this song, because remember, this is all about fractional or fragmented ownership and putting it into a diversified portfolio to lessen the risk. But March 2018, we invested $145,000, and it had 300 million plays on this song. There were 60 songs in the catalog, but this is the key song. So it's remarkably grown over the 5-year period from 300 million plays 5 times to 1.5 billion plays. But again, in answering the question of evaluating how important the brand is, and now this is just one platform, it's the one with the most market share, about 30%. But that's, some key evaluation or financial metrics for you to look at. Now, if Connor drills down into that, that song credit thing, you can see, again, who we bought it from, how many owners are there. And I think another important point is, if we're now collecting about almost 30,000 US dollars on this, or about 40,000 Canadian, we've almost gotten we'll show you that in the next slide. But here's the point: you could consolidate within the investment you've already made, because we've had it for 5.5 years, so we're very happy with it. In fact, within the year, we'll have gotten all of our money back on the $145,000 investment, and we've got at least 100 years to go. So,
Wow.
If it doesn't grow anymore, that's $3 million.
Wow.
So the longevity of this passive income that could be passed on to your family is pretty cool.